You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. A few years ago at a lecture in Hillman City, Hamid Ali decided he just had to get to know Ayşenur Ezgi Eygi. They kept making eye contact, and he thought there could be something between them, but he lost track of her in the crowd. Then came the internet sleuthing. Hamid sorted through tons of tiny Instagram profile pictures for women who looked like Ayşenur. No luck. So we went to another event hosted by the same organization, hoping she'd be there.
I ride my bike there because it's pretty close, and I get to the event, and I'm early, so when I go freshen up, I go to the bathroom. Someone's in the bathroom. I wait, and I'm like hyping myself. I'm like, okay, this is the plan. If I see her, this is... Anyway, the door opens, and she walks out. And all of that kind of prep goes out the window, and I'm like, deer in headlights, like, oh, hi. And she's like, hi, because I said it really enthusiastically. Like, because in my head, we're already talking and we already know each other because, I've been thinking about it the whole time. And she kind of just like, hi, and then like walks past me. And then I was like, okay, that was my shot. I missed it.
All seemed lost. But then someone in their group suggested they should all get pizza. Ayşenur was going too. Suddenly, Hamid had another chance to get her attention, but he had to look cool. He needed his brother's motorcycle.
I ran home. I was like, dude, I gotta borrow your bike. Trust me. And then he's like, yeah, sure. I pull up to this pizza spot, and I take off the helmet, and it's perfect. It's perfect timing because she's pulling in and getting out of the car right as I pull up, take the helmet off, and she like does a double take, and the rest was history. We started talking, and then we talked every day since.
They got married in 2021, and those talks continued up until September 6th, 2024, the day an Israeli soldier shot and killed Ayşenur in the West Bank. Nearly a year later, her family is still looking for answers to basic questions about what happened that day. Ayşenur was born in Turkey. Her family moved to Seattle when she was less than a year old, and she became a U.S. citizen. Ozden Bennett is Ayşenur's sister. She says Ayşenur loved playing pickleball, especially with their dad on Alki Beach, or just grabbing coffee and going for a walk. Ozden misses the small moments.
So I have a lot of memories of just like eating pho where we put a little too much sriracha in the broth, and the little like cream puffs that they give you for free, and seeing her like do her little happy wiggle because she thought it was really delicious.
One of Ayşenur's greatest passions, though, was activism. She worked in many areas, including human rights, religious freedom, and climate justice. In high school, she transferred to a social justice-focused school. In 2016, according to a Washington House resolution celebrating her life, she helped organize a mass student walkout against xenophobia.
And I think just in terms of justice and social justice and human rights in general, she just had an innate desire to do good and to contribute in a way that, in whatever ways that she could.
At the University of Washington, Ayşenur studied psychology and Middle Eastern languages and cultures. In 2024, she helped lead the pro-Palestinian encampments on the University of Washington campus. Her sister remembers this organizing sometimes came at the expense of Ayşenur's studies.
Like it really became something that she put almost all of her energy into, to the point where her friends and Hamid, her husband, would say, like, you need to like do this essay, do the essay and then like go spend some time at the tents or whatever.
She was planning to pursue graduate school, but Hamid says she didn't want to be an armchair academic, theorizing or analyzing without engaging real people. He says she loved to connect. Ayşenur's desire to understand things firsthand drove her to go to the West Bank, to volunteer as an observer with the International Solidarity Movement, a Palestinian nonprofit.
A lot of people have principles, and when it comes to, doing something difficult to ensure that you are living by them, a lot of us, and myself included, will falter. But she didn't have that problem. I mean, most of the time. She was still human.
Ayşenur felt she had done all the activism she could for the Palestinian people from Seattle. She decided she needed to document illegal Israeli settlement activity in the West Bank in person. In her first couple days in the West Bank, she joined other members of the organization in the Palestinian village of Beita, where there was a weekly demonstration against an Israeli settlement. Hamid remembers Ayşenur telling him that she intended to observe the protest at a distance.
She was more of like, this is going to be like a test run for me. I'm going to be more of an observer in the sense that she'd keep her distance and document from a distance, whereas the other volunteers might be closer to the protesters documenting. So she would take that role.
But that distance didn't matter.
Tonight, an American among the latest casualties of the Middle East conflict. The U.S. State Department confirming Ayşenur Ezgi Eygi, a 26-year-old Turkish-American activist, was killed in the West Bank. Eyewitnesses say she was shot by the IDF while participating in a protest near Nablus against expanding Israeli settlements.
Ozden found out about her sister's death from her husband, Steve. The call came early in the morning.
And so Steve came and woke me up, and I was like a little groggy, and I thought he was waking me up because our 6-month-old at the time needed nursing or something. And he said, "Hey, are you awake?" And I was like, "No." And he said, I need you to like wake up and really hear what I'm going to share. And that like jolted me awake. And he said, "Ayşenur." And I said, "Is she hurt?" And he said, "She was at a protest." And immediately my mind starts filling in the blanks of what could have happened. And he said she was shot in the head. And I just remember like wailing in a way that I haven't ever experienced before. And I kept asking him like if he was joking, if he was being serious. Because I just, like my brain could not accept what I was hearing.
Ozden is 7 years older than her sister. She says at times she has worried that she failed in her role as a big sister because she didn't do enough to discourage Ayşenur from going to the West Bank.
You know, sometimes it's sad because it feels like I couldn't convince her not to go, or like I didn't protect her in the way that I wanted to. Or like, there she goes not listening to me again. You know, that kind of like big age gap sister dynamic.
Ozden recalls having just a brief time to grieve privately before leaning into her family's public fight for answers. The first statement on Ayşenur's killing from Israel said the military had, quote, responded with fire toward a main instigator of violent activity who hurled rocks at the forces and posed a threat to them. Less than a week later, the Israel Defense Forces released an initial inquiry that said it was highly likely that Ayşenur was hit indirectly and unintentionally by Israeli fire. A Washington Post investigation published a day later found that Ayşenur had been shot and killed in an olive grove 20 minutes after protesters had moved down the main road in the village of Beita.
Oh man, I don't even remember exactly what the first version of this I heard, but the most frustrating one was that it was like somehow she had she was actively being aggressive or something like that, and somehow therefore deserved it, or it was justified or something like that.
Key details about the day Ayşenur was killed remain unconfirmed. To this day, the family doesn't know the identity of the person who shot Ayşenur. As far as they know, no one has been held accountable. Her family has demanded an independent investigation.
We reject Israel's narrative that this was a mistake, that it wasn't intentional. And we want a U.S.-led investigation so that they can come to the same conclusion, so there's some sort of accountability.
Within weeks of Ayşenur's killing, Washington Senators Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell and Representatives Adam Smith and Pramila Jayapal all added to calls for an independent investigation. Ayşenur's family met lawmakers and federal officials, including then Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in Washington, D.C. in December. They left that meeting discouraged.
You know, our meeting with the secretary was cordial, and he expressed his, condolences, but pretty much just refused to be helpful in any way that we were looking for.
Ozden and Hamid say not much has changed in the years since Ayşenur was killed. We reached out to the Israeli military to ask about the status of their inquiry into her death. An IDF spokesperson told us a military police criminal investigation division investigation had been completed and referred to the military prosecutor's office. They did not indicate what it contained or if that investigation would be made public. Ayşenur's family says they have received very little information from Israel. In fact, Ozden said she hadn't heard about the completion of any Israeli investigation until we asked her for a response to what Israel's army told us about the military police finishing its probe. Even so, she says she's skeptical of anything the report would contain. She read this statement to us.
We've said since the beginning that an Israeli-led investigation is irrelevant. Israel investigating itself is like a judge asking a murderer to look into their own crime. It's unacceptable to us. The United States must do more to protect its citizens and hold Israel accountable for its crimes.
We also reached out to the U.S. State Department and the Department of Justice about Ayşenur's case. We didn't hear back from the DOJ. As for the State Department, a spokesperson said they have, quote, no higher priority than the safety and security of U.S. citizens. But they didn't respond to a follow-up question about whether they plan to push for an independent investigation. Members of Washington's federal delegation say they are continuing to press for more information. In July, Senators Cantwell and Murray both signed another letter to Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Attorney General Pam Bondi asking for more information on Ayşenur's case and the deaths of others in the West Bank. When we reached out, Senator Murray's office also told us she had raised the issue with the new Israeli ambassador in May. In the meantime, Ayşenur's loved ones continue their calls for justice, but they say the work can take a toll. Ozden Bennett says at times it's been hard to mourn her sister and talk about her publicly.
When we do events and we come together with community and we talk about her, I feel like that's when everyone else gets to grieve in a way. And I find myself having to shut that process off in order to be able to speak about her, in order to continue sharing her story. And it's usually in the moments where I'm by myself or I'm driving or I'm on the couch with my husband at the end of a day after the kids have tucked in that I can really sit with the loss of her. And it still feels surreal most of the time.
Hamid Ali, Ayşenur's widower, says he actually welcomes the times when a wave of grief overtakes him.
I think that's the only way I feel closest to her now, is when I'm feeling that immense pain. And so most of the days I want to have a little bit of that, maybe not all day.
In their public statements and in our conversations with them, Ayşenur's family has wanted to make something clear. The loss of their sister, wife, and daughter is just one example of the toll in the West Bank, where, according to UN records, Israeli settler violence has reached a record high since the Hamas-led attack in October 2023. That includes incidents of arson, firebombing, and physical confrontations leading to the killings of Palestinians.
We watch on our screens, we see photos every day of the suffering that people in Gaza are experiencing. But Palestinians are also being stripped of their land, their rights, and everything in the West Bank as well. And that, like, right now, especially, as all the attention is on Gaza, perhaps, that violence is able to escalate more and more and more.
Israel recently approved the largest expansion of new settlements on Palestinian land in decades. Settlements the international community generally views as illegal, though Israel disagrees. Hamid says Ayşenur was not naive to the scale of this problem, but she refused to give up.
I think that's what I learned from her, is that emphasis on, I'm cynical, I'm skeptical, and I'm a little less so now because of her and because of how she viewed the world in this way, that, like, yeah, things seem hopeless and things seem insurmountable and overwhelmingly bad, but it doesn't mean you can't do anything. It doesn't mean that the little things that you do and can do won't matter.
You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. And hey, this show is only possible because listeners support us. If you are able to give right now, check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m., Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.